Hello everyone. So last video we discussed about the basics of Python and we started the numbers, strings and the input function in Python. Now we are going to move on to the part 2 of our tutorial, and in this one we are going to discuss about how the arrays are behave in Python and the types of arrays available in Python. So this is the code that this is the file actually I'm going to discuss, part 2, tutorial part 2. So if you open this one, so you can see we have this set of material. Okay, so if you, before going on to the arrays in Python, so if you uh, focus on the arrays, the generally the topic called arrays, and you'll get to know that array is simply a sequence of elements, right, stored in fixed sized of uh, memory, right, memory location. So simply RAM. So let's say if you are going to implement array in another programming language, so you have to do it like this in text. Like let's say you have to give the elements. I mean, how many elements are there? 5. So then you can give the elements like this. So what happens simply when in other programming languages, when you are going to do it, simply in your RAM, these values will be saved like this, right? But in most of the programming languages, if you are going to create a integer type array, so integer, like in the RAM, if you consider this kind of a cell as 4 bytes, so this is how these values are saved: 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. But thing is now, if you right, so go into deep, you will find that, let's say, okay, 10. If you take this 10 value, so this 10 is actually now here. This is a 4 byte. So in RAM, we usually go with 4 bytes. So inside this 4 byte, you have 32 bits, you know, right? So 1 byte is 8 bits. So altogether we have 32 bits. So simply this 10 will be simply saved like this in your array, I mean the RAM, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1. So 2 to the power 0 is 0, 2 to the power 1 is 1. So this is 2, and this is 0, and this is also 0, and this is 2 to the power 3. So it's 8. So you are going, if you are going to add them up, you are going to end up with 10. So that's how actually values are saved. But it's not important when it comes to Python, since Python, we don't have something called arrays in Python. So we will see how we can deal with arrays in Python. We have 3 solutions for that: lists, tuples, and dictionaries. And in Python, we don't have something called arrays, right? So keep that thing in mind. But I explained you the basic idea of array, right? So when it comes to Python, we have 3 main types of arrays, like lists, tuples, and dictionaries, right? So that's how Python, in Python, you are going to implement arrays. So what we will do now, we will go through each and every one, and we will discuss what are lists, tuples, and dictionaries. So we will first go through the tuples, right? And yeah, so when you are going to define a tuple, we are going to first discuss about lists, right? So how we are going to implement a list in Python is simple. What you can do is you can assign a name for the list, so let's say my list, and then using square brackets, what you have to do is you have to assign the values to the lists. And the important thing is that Python actually, no matter the data type of the element, you can have any kind of a element saved here, right? So no matter whether it's a number, that means a float, integer, or a let's say a string or a character, no matter what's the data type, you can save anything in a list. So as the name suggests, list can hold anything. Now, anything in the sense, not numbers and strings, but I will show you in our coming workshops. We can even save images, we can even save videos, we can even save neural networks. I mean, we can save anything inside the Python list. So it's a very versatile type of a data type available in Python. So keep that thing in mind. Anything can be saved in a Python list, not only strings and labels. We will see some examples in the future, but we will get the introduction today, right? So if you want to access these values, let's say how we can access these values. Now I'm going to, right, access the value 0 like this, right? So you can see. And another thing, you can have a list inside another list like this, right? For example, now here, so you know that this is the 0th element, first element, second element, third element, and the fourth element, right? So if you like enter 1, you know that it's 20.35, since the indexes are always start from 0, right? So that means if you simply index this 0, 1, sorry, 1, 2, 3, and the whole thing is 4, right? The whole thing is 4. Yeah, so this whole thing can be identified as 4. So if you run 4, that means the first element is again a list. So list inside the list, yes, you can do it, right? So that's why it says Python is a bit weird, right? But anyway, you can do it. My list 4, that simply say the fourth element. So fourth element is a list inside a list. Now here is the important thing that you can now what this means. Okay, fourth element, first element, that means okay, this is the first element, and in that one the first element. So this is 0, 1, and 2. So fourth element of my list is this one, and inside that we are going to get the first element. So this is the first element. So if you enter, 2000 will be appeared here, right? And I will show you some example using the my list. Now you can see that you can assign anything inside a Python list. So that's the main idea here, and that's the most important thing. And if I define a list like this with only numbers, right, and we can have some idea about this indexing, and yeah, so I think you can remember these things. We discussed about these things in strings. So this prints the whole array at once. So you can see all the values are printed here, and you know this simply 1. So I just print 1 here. That means it prints 20, right? Then what you have to do is 1 to 5. Now, as I mentioned, always the upper limit in Python is always 1 less than the upper limit, the real upper limit. So 1 to 5. So this is the element 1, and up to 5 means 4, right? So you can see these values are printed here. And here in the second one, so it says 2 to the end is not mentioned. That means 2 to end. So in that case, simply you can start from 2 and go up to the end. So 2 to, I mean 4 to 40, 23, 21, 24, and 12. And thereafter here, the other side, like up to 5, the starting value is not mentioned. So in that case, it will be started from 0 and go up to 4, right? So these values are printed, as you can see. And also the next one, -1, you know, the last one, and -2 is the one before the last one. So you can see the 24. And here, let's say 1 to -2, it's from 1 to 1 before 2 before the last one, right? So you can see the last one, 1 before the last one, like this. So 20, 40, 23, and 21, right? And yeah, so you can update values in a list like this. So now I'm asking to change the fourth value to 1000. Yes, so what happens is now it will be replaced simply, right? It will be replaced. So the fourth value was 21. Now I ask to replace it with 1000, right? So if you run it and see, right? So if you run this and see, you can see the fourth value is changed to 1000. Now, very important. That means you can, once a list is declared, you can change the list value into any item you want, right? So if you, for example, if you want to make this a list or whatever the value, right? Right. Now, in this case, what happens? if you run this one, you will see this kind of output, right? So the fourth element become a list again, right? So very interesting, right? And also when it comes to this, you can, if you want to delete values, you can use the del keyword, and you can then mention what the value to be deleted, and you have to provide the index, right? So I asked to delete the last element, right? So let's see, the last element is 12. So when you run this, let's see whether the 12 is deleted. Yes, exactly, it's deleted. So if you want to delete something from the from a tuple, you can do it like this. So let me delete the fourth element. Yes, you can do it like this, right? So the that newly added list inside the list is removed, this one, right? Okay, so then deleting, right? And we have some standard functions in Python lists where we can use them in order to get some properties of the Python list, right? So here we have a list declared like this: 10, 20, 40, 23, 21, 24, and 12. So what I'll do is, we have some functions that we can input list inside that function. So these are some example: length, max, min, sum. So what we can do is, we have a list like this. So I input it to the sum function. So in sum function, the sum function simply returns the summation or the addition of these set of values in this list. So you can get the addition like this. And also this is not only for the sum. You can get the maximum, you can get the minimum, and you can get the length, right? So what do you mean by max, min, and length? So max is the maximum value of this list, and obvious, the minimum would be the minimum, and what do you mean by the length, right? So length is a bit important thing. So length returns the number of elements, the total number of elements in the list, right? So you can get the number of elements in the list using the length. And here, now when it comes to, okay, max, use the maximum value. So if you have a string array like this, so any idea what the maximum gives? So here it gives print physics. So what's the reason? So it's going to consider it in the alphabetical order. So P is the largest one. If you categorize it, if you arrange it to the alphabetical order, so the first character will be taken here, right? So according to the first character, the order is created, right? So P is the far away character of the alphabet, right? So compared with these two, three character M, C, and P. And the minimum will be C, right? So this is the closest one. So if you run this one, you can see. But now what happens if you have the same character for the three names like this? So in that case, we can't compare it using the first character. So in that case, it moves to the second character. So that's what happens here, right? And similarly, the same thing. And yeah, so then we have other methods as well. So what do you mean by the difference? What do you mean by the methods and functions, right? The difference between those two. So if you simply consider function, so what you can do using a function is that you can pass a list inside the function. So sum, and we pass my list inside that sum function. But when it comes to methods, so what happens in methods? Now methods are called by a list dot. Now, for example, if you refer the my list, right? So if you want to call the method append, how you can do it? My list dot append. So you have to call it using dot. So that means this is, if you are familiar with object-oriented programming, you will understand that this is simply calling to a method of the mylist object. So it's simply considered the list as an object, and we call the method. So append, simply what append does is simply it appends the given value to the end of the list, the already existing list. Now this is the already existing list, and I append this string to that list, and the updated one you can see. So you can see this John is there at the end, right? And also, now I'm not going to go through each and every method here, but I will keep some for you, and I will explain the most important. And here you can see the index. So index simply, now this is the my list. So I have given, let's say, okay, 40 here. Let's give 40 here to see what's the output. And if you run this one, yeah, I missed a parentheses. So it says 2. So what I mean by that? So this is a 0 element, first element, and the second element. So it simply returns the where this, I mean, it's going to search where the 40 is there in the list, right? So if it is there, it returns the index where that 40 is. Okay, so 40 is 0 element, first element, and second element. So second element is the 40. And if you like, let's say, now here we have 20 in two places, 20 in here and 20. So what will happen here? So if you think that both values are will be shown like, okay, 0 1, okay, so they are 20 is in the first element, and 3 2 3 4 and 5. So 2 and 5 both for both first element and the fifth element. No, it only gives you the least one. So it also returns the lowest index in the list that object appears, right? So similarly, you can see the append and the count and extend. So I will keep those things for you, so you can simply go through those things and identify and understand what are, I mean, what we can do using these methods and the output, right? So I'll keep those things for you. So I use the append and the index. So I keep the remaining to you to go through and get the idea, right? But now I'm going to quickly move on to the tuples. So the second type, so we have already discussed about list a little bit, but now the thing is, don't think that this is all. No, when you are going to go into the more advanced workshop, then you will find that we will use all of these things that we are going to learn under this workshop. We will use most of them in our implementation. So sometimes you may not see the real applications of the things that we are going to cover, but when you are going to go to the machine learning workshop, deep learning workshop, image processing workshops, then you will see that all of the things that we are going to cover in this basic Python workshop will be appeared in those advanced applications and advanced examples. So please go through, please get the foundation, and please get these ideas and everything concrete in your mind. So it will be quite easy, and it will be very comfortable for you to complete those advanced workshops coming in the future, right? Okay, so let me quickly go to the second type of arrays available in Python, right? So tuple. So you can see a list is declared with a square bracket, but a tuple is declared with round brackets. And one major difference between a tuple and a list, other than that, tuples and lists are almost the same, right? So we are going to declare this tuple using this round brackets, and you can see, okay, so tuple is declared, and when you are going to print it, you are going to see. So the other thing is, now I have created this kind of a thing, and you can see now the everything works, right? Taking the max value and the min value, right? So everything works, right? So if you take the summation, right, so everything works. So this is quite similar to a list, right? So only the difference is, if you compare this with a list, the main difference is that it uses square brackets, but this use round brackets. So that's the main difference here. But one major difference is there in when you are going to compare tuples and the lists, right? Once a tuple is declared, you can't change the value of that tuple. Now we have a tuple like this, and let me change the second index of the tuple to let's say 1000, right? So this can be done, and we did it for a list, right? So somewhere like this, Yeah, we didn't make any modifications. We did, right? Um, okay, so for example, yeah, here you can see, no, here also and also here, right? So we change the fourth into a list, right? So that means we can change, we can modify list, right? But when it comes to tuples, tuples are not modifiable, right? So that means, okay, I'm trying to change the second value to 1000. That means, okay, 0, 1 and 2. So I'm trying to change this 40 to 1000. So let me try it. You can see tuple, we are getting an error, a type error called tuple object does not support item assignment. That means once a tuple is declared, we can't, or we can't modify a tuple, right? So tuple is kind of a read only object, right? So it's similar to list in many ways, but when it comes to modification, no, you can't change, you can't modify, you can assign new values, no, nothing. When a tuple is declared, that's it. You can do anything, but you can't change the values, you can modify that tuple, right? So if you the append everything, no, nothing is available for tuples, like modification things are not available for tuples, right? But other than that, tuples can be used for, I mean, this indexing can be done, right? So everything is similar to the maximum length, everything is the same, but one major difference, you can't change the values. That means you can't modify a tuple once it declares. Now you may be wondering, then what's the reason or what's the advantage of having tuples in Python? Yes, we have lots of advantages, and we will use tuples in lots of examples. Then you will understand this read only property, right? The non-modifiable property is useful in many applications, so we will discuss about those things in the future implementations, right? So lists and tuples are quite the same. The only difference is that tuples are not modifiable, right? Okay, so the last thing, the third one of the third type of arrays, and they are called dictionaries. So we will see what's a dictionaries quickly. So let's say that I want to create a uh, list like this, right? So I want a list called student, right? So let me create that list. So the first element that I'm going to pass should be the name. And then you have the maths marks or the subject mark, subject 1 mark, subject 2 marks, and subject uh, 3 mark, right? So the name and the uh, subject 1 marks, subject 2 marks, and subject 3 marks, right? So we have 3 marks and the name. So this is a list, right? So now if you declare something like this, so if you want to access the name, then what you are going to do? So if you want to print the name, let's say access the name, so then it will be the 0th element, right? So simply, if you want to get the subject 1 marks, it would be 1, right? So that means this element. If you want to get the subject 2 marks, third subject, so then 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So what I want to explain here is that if you want to access a value in a list, I mean list, yes, you have to access it using the index, right? So you can see 0 index. Likewise, we have indexes for each and every value. So this is 0, 1, 2, and 3. So if you want 56, that means you have to print like is 2 and 3. But when it comes to dictionaries, right? So dictionaries are a bit different. Dictionaries are now the same thing. I'm going to declare a dictionary for that the same application. The student kind to save the name and 3 subject marks of a student, right? So you can use a dictionary. When it comes to a dictionary, dictionaries are defined using curly brackets, right? So list square brackets, tuples round brackets, and dictionaries curly brackets. So here we have the values, like the same thing, we have the values, right? Okay, John, but John is not available there alone. You have a key for that, right? Like this, name John. So now this is the key and this is the value. So we have two pair. I mean, we have pair, a key and a value. So this can be said as key 1, value 1. Then comma, I can add another key and value. So let's say, okay, subject 1, S1, right? Let's say S1, colon. Now colon is after the semicolon, I mean the inverted comma, keep that thing in mind. Then I'm going to add 80 here, right? And similarly for the S2 and S3, I'm going to add the same thing. So, and finally, I'm going to, for the S3, I'm going to add 56, right? Okay, so this is a dictionary. Now, the thing is, now these are called keys, right? And these are called values. So after the colon, sorry, here, after the colon, they are values. Before the colon, they are keys. So now, what's the special thing here? Once a dictionary is declared like this, right? Once a dictionary is declared like this, what you can do is, if you want to access a value, then no need to give like 0 or 1 or 2. No need to remember that order. Now let's say you have 100 values in the element. You have to always keep the element, I mean the index number in your mind, right? So name is there, mass marks is there, or mass marks is at the first, I mean the subject 2 marks at the second, subject 3 marks at the third place, right? No, here what you can do, no need to remember the index. What you can do is you can call it by the name, I mean the key, right? You can call it by the key. So this simply prints you the, right? And if you want to print the subject 2 marks, then S2, right? So it prints you the S2 mark. Now, what's the advantage? This is a very useful thing. Now we use dictionaries in lots of applications in our implementation. So here the main advantage is that no need to remember the index. Okay, the name is at the first element, the math mark, I mean these marks are in the first element, I mean the second element, third element, fourth element. No, what you can do is you can give the key, right? So if you want to get the value, you have to call it from the key, right? So here value 1, key 1, key 2, value 2. So if you want to get the value, you have to call it by the key, student key, then it gives the value, right? Understood, right? And right, so that's what you call a dictionary, right? And the other thing is, it's not always, I mean the key not always to be a string. The key not necessary to be a string always. You can have like integers as well. Okay, 8 John. Now the important thing here is, so this is the key, then the value, key, value, key, value. Anyway, you can have anything here as the key, but the thing is, if you are going to have the key 8, like 8 here, then if you want to access this value, you have to provide 8 here, right? Simple, right? I have run this, right? See, same result, right? But let's say, okay, no need to have integers, 8.5, right? So then you have to call it by 8.5, right? I mean, you have run this, the update is not done. Okay, now, right? So it works. See, now the key and value, you can have any type, any data type here, right? Not necessary to be strings, right? So you can have anything, just for your knowledge. Okay, so now if you want to update a value, right? So here now maths, physics, chemistry and everything is there. So what I'm going to do, student maths, I'm going to assign to end. So what happens, the maths key here is updated, right? So the maths value will be updated using the key, right? And here what I'm going to do now, you know that there is no any key called AVG, right? So no any key called AVG in this list, right? No any key called AVG in this list. So what I'll do, I'll define something called student AVG, and I get student physics, chemistry, and divide it by 3, and then I print it. You can see the average is added. So this is the case here. If you are going to call a key that's not available, that key and the value will be created, right? For example, now this is the student class. I mean, student, the student, right? Dictionary. So now I'll do a dummy thing like this. Now it makes no sense. What happens here? I call a key called KK. So no key called KK, and I assign 1000 for there. And what happens? That is added as a pair, right? A key and a value. So it's added as a pair here, right? Understood. And one important thing, it comes to dictionaries, you can see that you can have, if you are going to create a dictionary, you can have these keys and values separately, right? Keys and values separately. So now keys are in a separate list and values are in a separate list. Now this is not necessary to be a list, it can be a tuple as well. So by combining these two, keys and values separately, so you have the keys and values separately, so we can zip them. Zip, you know what zip is, right? So you can zip the keys and values arrays, I mean the list, and create a dictionary. So it simply creates a nice little dictionary like this. You can have the keys separately in a tuple or a list and values separately in a tuple or a list. You can zip them and create a dictionary like this. Okay, so that's pretty much everything about dictionary. So you can read the remaining thing and implement. So I covered the most important things, and you can simply go through these things and see what these things are and what these methods and functions of dictionaries does, right? So anyway, I will quickly go to the quiz and the quiz 2, the last quiz we explained. So you are asked to create 3 dictionaries for sine, cosine, and tangent, and standard angles value is shown in the table, right? So here sine 0, 0, sine 30, 0.5. Likewise, we have the table, right? So what you are asked to do is uh, simply implement these as dictionary. So you can see 0, sine 0 is 0, right? And sine 30 is half, and sine 45 is 0. Now these are converted to decimal places, right? And likewise, right? So the cosine, cosine 0, so 0 is the key and the value is 1, and key is 30 and the value is likewise. So we have defined the whole cosine, tangent, and right. So what happens now, we are going to call it like sine 30. So when the sine 30 is printed here, you can see the sine 30 value, right? So otherwise what happens, right? For example, if you do it like this, I mean a list, like a list, right? So now what you are going to do, you have only values. So if this is the case, what happens, right? So then if you want to get the sine 30, you have to call it by 1, right? So sine 30 value is in the first element, right? See, but if you have this kind of a dictionary, it's well defined, and you can have the sign table simply like this stored in a dictionary, right? And then using an input function to take name and math marks of 10 students to 2 different lists, names and marks, using the append function. Then use the shift function to create a dictionary called student using names as keys and marks as values. So what you are asked to do is 10 students. So we'll use the loop here. Now you don't have the loop knowledge here, but we in the next topic we will discuss about loops. But for now, just assume that this has a loop which run 10 times simply, right? So we collect x and y like the name and the marks of two x and y variables, and we append it to array called names, so that all the names are appended to all the names are taken to x, and x is appended to names, the empty list names, and marks are taken to y, and y the marks are appended to the marks list. So finally I'll print the names and marks, right? And also then you have the dictionary printed as here. So but since it takes time, so I will do it for 5, right? So I'll enter some dummy values like this, right? And right. So can you see now? Okay, so we take the name, and name is appended to the names. Now you know what happens in the append, right? So we did this in the list. So what append simply right? So here, yeah. So what append simply does is add the given value to the end of the array, end of the list. But here you can see that we don't have a, I mean, when it's in the beginning, the names and marks are empty lists. So it started from GG and append all the values to the names list and marks to the marks list. So then we use this zip method and we create a dictionary like this, simple, right? Okay, so this is how we are going to do that quiz, and in the next video we will discuss about decision making and Python loops. Thank you very much.